welcome to the 20th anniversary edition of Campus Lisa. This is our webinar series for 2021. I'm joined here by my daughter Scarlett, who this is part of working remotely, my friends. I want to welcome you all to today's webinar. We're going to kick off our series with this one entitled ESR SIS, Understanding Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. So as some of you may be familiar already, the ESR SIS project has spent the last 2 years on an intensive business process analysis effort, speaking with hundreds of staff, faculty, and students in order to understand the current state of the university's student services, identify opportunities for improvement, and together envision the future that we all want to see. We're now performing pre-hab on reporting needs and system integrations. Altogether, this work is paving the way for a future where we see human-centered problem solving at the core of the SIS. But before we get into that, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. So first of all, the session is being recorded. So if you miss it or you know anyone who would like to see it, it will be available later on at campuslisa.ucsd.edu. Everyone will be on mute except for our panelists, unless we decide to unmute you. The entire presentation will be about an hour with some time at the end to address questions. And we will have live captioning going on. If you don't see it, it will be captioned at some point. We are definitely doing captioning for these sessions. Down at the bottom, you'll see the Q&A window. You can use at any time to submit your questions. And of course, in the last 10 minutes or so, we'll address that Q&A chat room, and that will pretty much be it. So let's introduce our speakers for today. To kick off today's session, I would like to welcome Katie Freehafer, who's going to get us started and let us know who else we have. Hi, Katie, welcome.
Hi, Miguel. Thanks so much for that introduction.
Thank you.
A pleasure being here today. We're really excited to share with you about the SIS project. So let me get my presentation mode started here and I can kick it off. So as Miguel said, I'm Katie Freehafer. I'm the business process lead for the project. I originally hail from biological sciences, where I have worked since I graduated back in '07. Doing everything from marketing to web content development to web application development as a UX designer and as a technical project manager. Moving from there into process improvement work and really doing the holistic business process analysis that we are doing to prepare the way for the new SIS project. I'll introduce my next colleague here, Jonathan Whitman. Take it away.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Whitman. I am the solution architect for the SIS project as part of ESR. My regular job is a member of the Student Information Services team here at ITS, and been around UCSD for a while. I'm an alumni here, started in '89, and with the exception of 3 years, didn't really leave. So I do love being a part of this great institution. And fun fact about myself is I got to swim with an oceanic white-tip shark on purpose. It was pretty amazing. It was like walking into the Jurassic period watching this animal. But I'm super excited about the project that we have ahead of us and excited to share a bunch of details with you all about where we're at and where we're headed. And with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm Dave Garrison, and I'm the Senior Associate Registrar here at UC San Diego. Before becoming a Triton in 2018, I worked at UC Davis for 14 years. I led the implementation of degree audit software, developed applications, and touched on just about every facet of the registrar business. I'm a doctor of education, have an LSS green belt. I've had a mustache since the 3rd grade, like to build Legos with my 2 daughters, and have a cat named Mr. Mittens. My proudest accomplishment is that as a substitute teacher, I once pronounced every name correctly on the first try when taking roll in a class. And now I'll hand things over to Andrew.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Kaplan. I'm the design architect for extended studies for the ESR SIS project. My normal job here is the director of student and client services for the Division of Extended Studies. I've been with the division for 2 years and have worked in higher education for over 12. I did originally hail from New Jersey, but I preferred to have my feet in the sand than my feet in the snow. So I moved out west and definitely didn't look back. You can hear my accent every once in a while when I say water or coffee. I do have a 4-year-old daughter. She keeps me busy and has basically turned me into an encyclopedia of Disney princesses. And I will hand off the next intro to Brian Smith.
All right, thanks, Andrew. My name is Brian Smith, one of a few Brian Smiths at UC San Diego. When I was at IBM, there were 13 of me, and I would get their email all the time. Fortunately, that doesn't happen too much here. But I joined a couple of years ago after, it doesn't seem that long, but 24 years working in the private sector in IT for Accenture and IBM, doing mainly enterprise resource planning software implementations. My wife and kids and I live in University City, not too far from campus. So even pre-remote work, I could never really complain much about my commute because I never had to get on the freeway. And I am happy to first time presenting at Campus Lisa. My kids thought it was funny that I was presenting here though, because there's a Campus Lisa sign by Price Center, and my wife's name is Lisa. So whenever they see it, they go, "Oh, look, it's Campus Mommy," but not the same thing. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Katie.
Awesome, thanks, Brian. I'd like to just take a minute to introduce the rest of our team who are not presenting with us here today, but who have been incredible partners on this journey. We've got Cindy Lyons, who is our university registrar, change lead for central administrative units. Kathleen Johnson is our change lead for the academic side of the house, and Sarah Danford is change lead for extension. We have Cindy Sue as our change practitioner for Muir College, and Chris Rice is our enterprise architect. So big thanks to them for contributing content and for just being great partners. Today we're going to be talking about the ESR program, just a tad. I'm sure you all know what it is, but just to make sure. And then more specifically about the SIS project, about our vision, our scope, what we've been doing to prepare the way for the new SIS, lessons learned at this point in the process, what the RFP looks like, what the status is, what the new RFP vendor partnership is about, and our focus on the prehabilitation work that's going on right now. So to start us off on that, I will let Brian take the wheel.
All right, thanks, Katie. So enterprise systems renewal, what is ESR? I'm guessing most of you on the call probably know a little at least about ESR, but just to kind of recap a little, ESR has been going on for a number of years now, remaking campus systems that were older and not able to meet our needs anymore. But it's more than just an IT project replacing old software with new. The important thing about ESR is it also has a focus on business processes and practices. A common mistake a lot of organizations make implementing new software is you implement something new, but you keep your business practices the same way you've been doing things since 1972. And if you do that, you're not taking advantage of the capabilities of the software. You're not taking the opportunity to, improve your processes and adopt best practices. So, there is a very heavy approach on process and taking a more holistic approach to implementing new software at UC San Diego, and that's something Katie will talk about more in a couple slides. Next slide, please. So why replace ISIS? The 1980s was awesome. ISIS came out in the 80s. Why would we want to replace it? Well, ISIS was built, I think, in 1987, but it was never intended to last until the 2020s. To give just one example, section IDs, which are tied to every instance of a course, so we burn through quite a few of them every quarter, is a 6-digit field. At the time, no one developing the software could have imagined we would burn through 1 million section IDs, but a little while back, we actually got up to 6 nines. Fortunately, someone back in 1987 decided to start with section ID 100,000 instead of 1. So that gave us some more breathing room. We could go back and use 1 through 100,000. But that's really just a workaround, and it's only going to last so long. And that's just one example of some of the limitations of ISIS that, really it is pretty far along past the end of its life at this point. Looking back to 1987, at the time, a 2400 baud modem was fast. If students complain about Wi-Fi now, I can't even imagine their reaction to using a 2400 baud modem. East and West Germany still existed. And as an institution, we had a little over 10,000 students. Now we're up to 41,000. I know just since I moved back to San Diego in 2003, campus looks radically different than it did before. It's like every time I walk through the campus, you see buildings where parking lots used to be that have sprung up out of nowhere. So the university has grown and changed a lot. Technology has moved leaps and bounds beyond where it was in the 80s. ISIS is limping along, but it really is on life support at this point, and keeping it going too much longer, it is really not an option for us anymore. We've kind of kicked the can down the road, as far as we can at this point. Next slide, Katie. Thank you. So how will a new SIS impact students? So for students, the goal is always to provide a better student experience. And one of the pieces of that with a new SIS is providing support for all types of students. Just to give one example, our commencement student speaker this past spring, Francesca Hart, was a poli-sci major at Muir, but she also had a geographic information system certificate that she got at Extension, now Extended Studies. Today, that's two different student records in two completely separate instances of ISIS, one for campus, one for Extension. It's hard to serve students and give them a consistent experience when you've got two parts of the university that are tightly integrated in completely separate systems. So that's just one example of where, having a new student system and the vision of one repository for all student records in one place, will make it easier to support students. And obviously, especially with extended studies, there's a lot of people taking courses, that are online or don't fall into an academic term. It could be a weekend course for a certificate. It could be, 5 Saturdays over the course of a month. There's a lot of different types of courses out there that students take today that no one would have envisioned in 1987. And the last bullet here, really gaining insights into students. A lot of that is through student data feeding into the Student Activity Hub. And what that lets you do is see, okay, we're trying to raise graduation rates. What do folks who are not graduating have in common? And can we look backwards and find some, red flags that people were getting into trouble so we can intervene sooner? Those kind of insights and analytics, are hard to do with the setup we have today. And that's something that a new SIS, should help with as well. Next slide, Katie. Thank you. And then how will a new SIS impact me? For staff, there's always a curve with implementing a new system. When you first get it, it's kind of like installing a major update for your phone or for your laptop. And it's like, wait, where's this function that I used to do here is now somewhere else. But, the goal is to ultimately make people more efficient. There's a little bit of a learning curve getting into any new system, but the goal is that 3-4 years down the line, we're way more efficient at what we do than before. And a part of that is through automation. There's a lot of automation capability out there in modern systems that wasn't there in the 80s, and frees people up to do kind of the menial, manual, repetitive tasks, and instead lets us do, the more kind of bigger thinking and, being more proactive. It just gives us a lot more, flexibility. And then there's always some pain with the new system, but what's the impact again? We want to make it less like getting hit by a cement mixer and more like, wow, here's some things that I have time to do now that I never used to because I spent all this time on menial tasks X, Y, and Z. So, we're hoping for a very positive impact, even though there's always a few bumps at the beginning of a new rollout. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk about vision and scope for the project.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. So this slide is aligning business practices and campus systems. And the idea of this slide is that it shows all parts of the institution and their focus and how it connects towards the student experience, regardless of the student's entrance point or ultimate goal and path with the university. We're here to combine our powers. What is the same? Learn from each other and determine where we're different and why. Focus is always on the student experience. Their experiences with UC San Diego, regardless of what part or piece or division that comes from. Next slide, please. The strategic vision for a new SIS. So we're here to, what we want to do is to demonstrate that it's a student experience centered process. We are all one team. We're here to implement a modern SIS to create an overall student lifecycle that includes both extension and main campus. Acquire a system that allows for differentiated learning experiences across all divisions and a myriad of learning types. Contribute, create an agile, dependable, and sustainable system in support of the UC strategic plan. And transition to cloud-based solutions so we can adjust to the ever-changing needs in higher education. Next slide, please. Our guiding principles. So the guiding principles always tie back to the strategic plan, the student-centered experience, enabling us to maximize configuration over customization and to try and minimize customization because that is both expensive to implement and expensive to maintain. Utilize UC San Diego's internal resources first. Allow our external partners to help with the bulk implementation so the system understanding and expertise can be retained. This is, the example I would use for this is when you move. You might want movers to move the heavy boxes and to move the bulk of everything, but you want to pack those boxes and unpack them because you want to know how to put everything back together. We want that expertise, we want that knowledge to be retained within UC San Diego. Adopt and streamline as much out-of-the-box functionality. Do not try and replicate current state processes. So we don't want to fall back on the idea of this is what we've always done. Sometimes a new solution prevents you from having to go through all those steps. It can streamline and simplify those things for your employees and students alike. And that's really where we're trying to go with this. Address needs in an institution-first approach. What works best for everyone? How can we unify our needs? Integration with the ecosystem through API or NIFI connections. And that's just the idea that we want to make sure that our entire ecosystem works with the new SIS since it touches so many different parts of it. Next slide, please. So SIS program project scope. So we want to take a comprehensive look at all current state processes to determine how we can unify core functionality across all divisions. This will allow us to streamline core functions through all divisions of the university to leverage unified processes. Processes that we're focusing on are the course creation and scheduling, enrollment and registration, academic record retention and distribution, student finance, and financial aid and scholarships. Again, the idea here is that we try and unify these processes across all the divisions so that we can kind of find a common path for all of us to go down, allowing the system to work in a much more streamlined manner. Now I'm going to hand it over to Katie, and she's going to review the student experience.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so what are we actually doing? What have we been doing to talk to our users to actually figure these things out, the actual details of what's been going on for the last 2 years? I'm happy to share these with you. First of all, in fall of 2019, we had a work stream called Experience Analysis and Design, which our enterprise architect, Chris Rice, headed up. And that one was really focused on the student experience. It consisted of 2 different pieces, a qualitative and a quantitative piece of analysis. There was the experience catalog, which was the qualitative piece, which really clustered and really highlighted emergent themes that were provided from the conversations that happened with students. And then the quantitative survey that went out was kind of like the staff at work survey, where you had a survey that you filled out, and then that was really able to be analyzed with a statistical analysis that brought out key points that were put into this wall chart, an immersive display of both the qualitative and the quantitative data and the root cause analysis, all summarized down into the EAD deck, which was used to present to senior leadership. It is kind of a collection of the major themes that we refer back to, and can just look at again and again to figure out what we're doing with this work. With the qualitative analysis, there were a set of interviews that took place. We actually sat down in a room. This was back when we were all still on campus, and worked with many, many segments of the student population. We had undergrad, grad, transfer students, first generation students, international students, extension students, and sat down and really just did a deep dive into what they were doing, the things that were working well, things that weren't working well with the university. We recorded all of those. I think they were transcripted, and that was really valuable in kind of getting the word straight from the horse's mouth. In addition to that, the quantitative survey collected almost 5,000 valid responses. They had 1,650 pages that I actually saw the document. It was like 8-point font, no margins, just crammed wall to wall with the direct things that students were writing in about their experience at the university. All of which after analysis were, like I said, a statistical method was applied to it and these gap scores were put on it. And really what that did was it highlighted the major pain points and the areas that need more attention as we move into the implementation of the system of trying to figure out how to make life better for our students on campus. Financial aid and just finances in general were one of those systems that were very aware our system is brittle and it's not up to current standards. You know, students today can Venmo to pay for anything, and when they have to log into something that relies on ISIS, it's just not really what they would expect out of a modern university. So we're trying to address that. In addition to the EAD, which was the student side of things, we were looking at the staff side, which was the business process analysis workstream, where we were really trying to understand what and why the staff are doing what they do. That started off with the business process landscape, which kicked off in September of 2019, went for a few months, and then that led to the business process analysis and then the ideal state analysis that I'll talk about. So first of all, the landscape. We were literally getting in a conference room with sometimes up to 40 SMEs, putting things up on the whiteboard, using sticky notes, crowdsourcing information from our best experts on campus to figure out what does the student life cycle look like and how does that correspond to the practices that the staff are doing behind the scenes, which resulted in our guiding document, the process landscape. Here along the top, you can see it kind of goes along with the student life cycle, pre-enrollment, enrollment, and post-enrollment. Student finance stretches across all of that. And then on the staff side, we have these iterative or incremental periodic practices that happen that have to do with supporting curriculum, teaching and learning. And so those are kind of decoupled from the more time-based student life cycle. Each of these things was brought into a level 1, 2, and 3 organization. I don't know why my slides are a little laggy. There it goes. And overall, we identified 117 processes, 67 of which were selected for a deep dive. With those 67 processes, we identified the SMEs, the offices, the segments of campus that were related, and held over 200 current state discovery sessions that are still actually ongoing today. You know, there's always a conversation that spins off where, you know, you thought you had everything kind of in this box, and then somebody mentions, oh, did you talk to so-and-so? And so we're still doing discovery today and kind of following up on some of these little leads that we may not have had time for, except that we have, yeah, just a little bit of breathing room right now to do that, which is nice. Out of those 67 processes, we created 170 process maps, which encompassed variations such as undergrad and grad, or main campus, School of Medicine, School of Pharmacy extension, trying to capture all the different populations that use these processes, and have had over 233 SMEs participating to date. The tool that we've been using is ProMap, which is a new tool that the campus just started using a couple years ago. I think we were the first major project to be able to use this tool. And it's actually really cool because instead of having to be a total process mapping expert, even a layperson who is not an expert in that would be able to go in and start typing in, step 1, student enrolls in a course, put some details there, add some notes, you can attach files, screenshots, put decision diamonds in there. And as you're doing this behind the scenes, it's creating a process map for you that looks really nice. You can label who is doing which step, which systems are involved. It has a lot of really nice features to be able to tag things and to organize it in a different way or to mine the data from within your process maps. So we've been really lucky that we've been able to use this tool for the project. Going forward, it's going to be useful for the rest of campus because we're doing this work now, but once the new SIS is implemented and we have transitioned from current state to future state, we can then identify who are the people that are going to be doing that work for the future state ongoing, assign them as the process owner in ProMap, and then they can use this as a living document to keep their training up to date so that if they have new staff or if they have a change in practice, they can update their ProMap and then the SOP for that role is maintained. So bonus for campus. I could not mention this work without mentioning COVID, because of course COVID hit right in the middle of it. And we transitioned from these nice face-to-face interactions with our SMEs to doing everything via Zoom. And I just want to give a big, huge kudos to the entire SIS project team and to all the SMEs who have sat through countless hours of Zoom meetings to do this important work. After wrapping up current state, we moved on to ideal state, which we did earlier this year from February through June. We did a series of 2-week sessions, and in one case it was a 3-week session where every day from 8:30 to noon, we met, we had clustered and prioritized the current state processes for discussion, had a core group of SMEs and went through every single map, identified areas for improvement. We did something called a process system improvement model. We identified benchmarking questions. We gathered requirements, and it was just a huge amount of concentrated effort. We also had a little bit of fun with Zoom and with our different tools, trying out new ways of collaborating and of keeping people engaged. So you can see in the bottom right there, we had some crowdsourced drawing exercises that were a fun way of breaking the ice in the beginning of the day and encouraging collaboration. So huge shout out to our OSI partners that helped us with that, especially Antonio Nava was just an incredible partner with that. Brad Sollenberger also was a huge help, Prachi Raheja. Really, really fantastic, intensive work that went on that led to a lot of data that we're going to be using going forward into the SIS implementation. Namely, we have over 600 improvement ideas that were identified. We have 150 benchmarking questions that we're going to go to sister campuses and find out what they're doing and compare that to the options that we have and see what the best way forward might be. 530 SIS requirements and had 85 SMEs participating. So definitely invaluable work that we're bringing toward the future. And so now I'll turn things back over to Brian, who will talk to us about the RFP process and where we are with that status and with the next phase of the project.
All right, thanks, Katie. So RFPs, first of all, what is an RFP? Request for proposal. It sounds fancy, but really all it is we're trying to figure out what's the best SIS to select for the university out of the SISs out there on the market. So when we went about starting this was back, I'll never forget the week it came out, because it was also the week everything shut down because of COVID. I think it was like March 13th that the RFP went out to vendors in spring of 2020. They came back with their responses. They came back with pricing. Part of that package was there was a questionnaire with 150 questions that the vendors had to go through and answer, on what their capabilities were and a number of other things. And what we ended up with out of that initial vetting of the questionnaires was 3 finalists. And those 3 finalists then participated in conference room pilot. And conference room pilot, obviously COVID threw a bit of a wrench in that. Normally it's all in an actual conference room and you get free coffee and bagels and everything else. Instead, it turned into a Zoom room pilot, but it was the same general principle. We had each vendor for a 2-week period, so 6 weeks in all. We had SMEs, I think it was 50 or so from around campus, from all over the place, participating as scorers, because we wanted to make sure that, for each vendor, if you listen to the sales folks, they're kind of like, if you remember David Leisure as Joe Isuzu in those commercials back in the 80s, where he's making ridiculous claims about cars that aren't true. Salespeople don't necessarily lie, but they will bend the truth quite a bit, as Obi-Wan might say. So it pays to have them in a room and do a virtual room and do a demo. And we didn't just say, show us what your software can do. We brought them 35 very detailed scenarios that Chris Rice, our enterprise architect, had written up. And there are 35 things that, as a university, we struggle with in ISIS today. We weren't just throwing softballs. These were the harder things that we do. And, show me how your software handles this complicated scenario. And that's a very different thing than sales getting up there and showing you a bunch of PowerPoints saying, yes, it'll, send unicorns and rainbows to everyone's desks and make the world perfect. So it was very informative. We had a scoring scale from 0 to 5 that the SMEs scored every single scenario on for all 3 vendors. And we covered enrollment, academic records, billing and financial aid, extension, now extended studies, and School of Medicine and Pharmacy. So there were a lot of work went into preparing for this on the vendor's part, and also into scoring it on our SME's part, on our subject matter experts' part. Next slide, please. So after we got all that data from the conference room pilot, we got all the scores, procurement compiled them all together, came up with here's, for each area, how each of the 3 vendors did. Our expectation was, okay, now we'll pick one of the 3. Well, when we went back and looked at the scores, we discovered they weren't great. They weren't really what we hoped they would be. What we were looking for was a modern SIS that would handle a lot of these complicated situations that we run into. And instead, the feedback we got through the scoring from our subject matter experts was, no one's really making the grade the way we would like them to. There were some bright spots. Financial aid in particular got very good scores from one of the vendors, but overall, the student system wasn't quite where we hoped it would be in terms of what was out there on the market and the 3 finalists that we looked at. So, looking at that, leadership looked at the results and, ultimately decided, there's not really a solution out there right now that we can go ahead and start implementing today in May 2021, back when we were making this decision. So it feels a little bit like, Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown when he's about to kick it, because we were going down this path. But sometimes the right thing to do is to take a pause and to say, okay, if we tried to implement one of these right now, we would be in for a world of pain, and we would be going live with something that doesn't really meet the university's needs, or worse yet, setting ourselves up for, okay, implement something, but 5 or 7 years down the road, we're looking back and it's like, that really wasn't that much better than ISIS. So we're going to need to go through this all again. So what we did is we tried to learn from what the RFP told us and really use that as a foundation to keep working towards implementing a new SIS. And that takes us to the next slide. So the next slide is what we're calling a vendor partnership. And there's actually another RFP that's going to go out, I think, later next week, to vendors, asking them kind of some different questions, a different approach than we did when we were looking at the conference room pilot and looking at, implementing something immediately. What we're looking at now is which vendor would be best to partner with, someone who could work with us to evolve their product into something that meets our vision and meets our needs. So, realizing that we're at the starting point where we don't have a perfect system out there. We don't have a system that we would feel comfortable starting to implement right this second. Who is willing to work with us to move their product in a direction that we can implement, and still get us to where we want to be on a new modern system. So there's a lot in it really for both parties on this. We're a big university, and we are, a leading R1 university in the world. We have, a lot of complicated situations that are not unique to us. And if a vendor can figure out how to make us happy to a point, they're going to be able to make a lot of other schools happy too, and sell and make a lot of money, which is ultimately any vendor's goal, right? So the hope is that, and we've seen a lot of interest. All the vendors that were finalists are very interested in bidding on the vendor partnership. So that's the response that we're going to see coming back over the next few weeks, and then we'll evaluate again and see, which the best way is to go forward. So, and with that, I will turn it over to Dave Garrison to talk about lessons learned.
Thanks, Brian. We came away from the RFP No Award with some key lessons. The number one thing we learned in this process so far is that change is hard, and a new SIS is about as big a change as you can get in higher ed. We found that it's essential to know where we are and where we want to be. Every person has their own perspective about what the current state is and how they wish things work. We gathered stakeholders to meet and come up with a shared understanding of the current state and a shared vision for where we ideally want to be. And also, change is hard. We were also grateful for the extended timelines that the delays have given us. Looking at other projects and speaking from our own experience, we know that time's the greatest enemy to adaptation. Given enough time, you can steer in a city-sized ocean liner. If you try and take shortcuts, you end up, to borrow from a current event, wedged in the Suez Canal. So as frustrating as delays can be, they've proven to be overwhelmingly positive in how they've allowed us to prepare and assess. For instance, we've been able to get ahead of reporting needs. Jonathan's going to talk more about that. And yes, change is hard, but in the end, change can be very good. In this case, we're moving towards a goal that's really worthwhile. A modern SIS that can allow us to support the complexity of campus and maximize flexibility for future needs. And I'm going to turn things over to Jonathan.
Thanks, David. So one of the things that actually came out of the No Award that was a benefit to us is it really gave us a longer runway in terms of how much time we have to actually prepare for the new SIS implementation. And so some folks may be asking, well, what can you actually do to prepare for that? And a lot of that kind of centers around those systems that we know are going to remain after we implement a new student information system. And so we've already chosen certain systems that are going to stay here, things like our admission system, which is Slate, things like our degree audit system, which is UAchieve. Those types of things, we can prepare those systems so that there'll be minimal impact when a new student information system lands. One of the other things that came out of our lessons learned that we saw with the OFC implementation was that we can actually pre-address a lot of the reporting needs that are happening within the system today. And we can do that in a future state way. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. And then the other thing that we're looking at is how can we remediate a lot of the historical data? So we know that we have this historical data that we have to at least reference or be able to bring in. We don't know right away how much of it we're going to bring in. Are we going to bring the entirety of everything that we have? We're going to bring a portion of that in. Those are still things that have to be determined, but we can prepare that data in such a way to make it easier when we make that transition. The other thing is currently we're running two different systems of ISIS. So the Division of Extended Studies is running their own version of ISIS, and then main campus is running its own version of ISIS. One of the things that we're trying to do today is actually align campus systems and Division of Extended Studies or extension systems so that when we get to the new SIS, that alignment will already be in place. Katie, can you go to the next slide for me? One of the other things that I really wanted to chat with you all about is really the process of continuity planning. And I see the attendee list, and we have a mix of folks that are out in the academic departments, out on campus, and a group of folks that are with ITS itself. One of the things that will impact both groups is really our reliance on our legacy data warehouse. So as you saw with UC Path and with OFC, new data stopped flowing into our data warehouse by and large. And you'll see the same thing when we replace the student information system. One of the advantages that we have with our activity hubs is the student activity hub is actually probably the most mature activity hub that we have out of all of them. We started actually work on that activity hub back in 2017, I want to say 16, 17, right in there. It was the first activity hub to go live, and we have the most mature data governance around that activity hub with our institutional governance catalog. And so what are the big impacts of that is that you can actually start remediating your applications, your data stores, the things that you rely on the data warehouse today, you can actually start remediating those things today in the future state. We're looking at integrating everything out of our activity hub moving forward. So these would include, data loads, they would include integrations, APIs, all of those things can be done. And we have a great framework of continuity planning through Seho and his team that are out there. If you haven't put the things that you believe are downstream that you're using in the data warehouse today into our data inventory, please go and do that, because what happens is we start cataloging all of that, and Seho will apply our continuity planning framework to that to see what level of assistance, if any, will be needed in those remediation efforts. You don't want to wait until the new SIS is here and the data has stopped going into the data warehouse to begin that effort. So if we begin that effort today and you have a plan in place for how you're going to remediate your applications or your data needs, then by the time you get to the new SIS, all of that should be fairly painless, because what's going to happen is we're going to repipe the back end of the data. So from the old SIS to the new SIS, all of that data will continue to flow into the Student Activity Hub. So that means the front end, what you all are seeing from the data side, will have to only have perhaps minor refactoring, really based on changes between the old system and the new system. But by and large, all of your pipes will be in place, ready to go, ready to work, sort of regardless of whether you're in current state or whether you're in future state. Next slide. So what we did also want to do is it really address what we saw was the gap from the OFC implementation. That was really in reporting. So we can do that today with the Student Activity Hub. We can create reports. We know the reports that we have out there that folks are using operationally. A lot of those things are in query links. So we're creating one for one all of the query link reports they use today. We're refactoring those into our current set of BI tools. So you can imagine in future state, no more SQL executor, no more query link queries. All of those will be in our new BI tools like Cognos or Tableau. And so what that means is it means less change saturation that will impact you and your users as they go to reporting, because those reports will continue to exist and continue to operate even once we put the new SIS in place. And so that's really kind of what we're looking for. And we have a pretty big effort around this. So we made a few calls out there for data reports. We asked everyone to submit those. We were pretty successful. We got over 750 submissions for reports that people use across the entire campus that rely on student data. So now what we have is business analysts are going in, cataloging all of those reports, understanding which one of those reports are, across multiple departments for a campus, for our whole campus, and then which ones are really idiosyncratic and specific to individual departments. And as such, we reach out to those folks, we understand what the needs are, and then look at how we're going to remediate those needs moving forward. Next slide. So this is part of what we've done is we've kind of done some architectural maps of where our systems are today. So I know it's kind of hard to read, but if you look at the left side of this diagram with all the gray boxes, those are systems that are, our enterprise systems. They include things like Triton Link, the instruction tools on Blink, all of those things that our entire campus sort of relies to either consume data from ISIS, which is the big yellow cylinder in there, or feed data into ISIS as a part of it. I'm a student, I want to change my address, so I know that I'll get my diploma when I graduate, use Triton Link to do that. I want to go pay my bill. Those types of things feed into our student information system, and then our staff use a lot of those things to get information, academic history, transcript information, transfer courses, those types of things. And then down in the lower area, that's where our future state reporting is, those 3 green boxes with the sort of teal box, that's the Student Activity Hub, kind of going in there. And then kind of on the right side is a lot of the upstream systems, things like Slate, our admission system that feeds data into ISIS. The one that, most people want to focus on is really the top box, which I spoke about, is the data warehouse. And then the gray box in the top center right is about 450 applications that are consuming data out of that data warehouse. Those are the things that we'll either remediate out of the Student Activity Hub, we'll deprecate them because a new student information system will replace that functionality, or we don't know yet. We don't know because we haven't chosen our new SIS whether the application will be subsumed by the new SIS or whether it will have to continue on as the last mile application. So we've kind of done that classification of, we're going to keep it, or we're going to deprecate it, or we're going to contain it. Meaning we're not going to pour a ton of resources into enhancing those apps that we're not sure about. We'll keep them more in a maintenance mode. but we're, we don't know whether or not they're going to be replaced. And then Katie, if you can go to the next slide. We're doing the same over at Extension. And so you can see in the Division of Extended Studies, they have built whole front ends like we have on the campus side that will by and large go away. But there's some that will continue to remain in the last mile application form there. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dave.
Thanks, Jonathan. One of the larger pre-habbing activities we're doing is to select and implement a comprehensive curriculum management system. Why do we need a curriculum management system? Well, eCourse does not meet campus needs and isn't going to continue to work with the new SIS without significant reprogramming. It would be expensive and buggy. We need to prepare for future accreditation processes. We need to improve transparency and responsiveness. The campus is pursuing a lot of high-profile, highly innovative programs. Currently, it's a difficult and slow process to create, review, and approve these. Furthermore, COVID-19 has laid bare a lot of our process efficiencies. We need to be able to adapt to changing conditions quickly. At the end of the day, we need to align all of our systems to ensure our students have a positive and seamless experience. And the implementation of a comprehensive curriculum management system will be a huge step towards that goal. Currently, our curriculum management is done through a lot of disparate systems and processes. We use emails, PDFs, spreadsheets, and a variety of other systems that don't talk to each other easily. Processes and work streams are difficult to comprehensively document. Everyone involved in each process has their own procedures and practices. For example, we frequently get incomplete or invalid course approval requests at the registrar that require follow-up and a great deal of manual intervention. There's no central place to review changes. How do you know what has been approved? Where changes in the process? How will changes in adjacent departments impact your own? There's currently no good answer for these questions beyond ask and dig. A curriculum management system will make all of this much clearer and easier. Also, main campus and the Division of Extended Studies are fragmented. Pursuing our goal of encouraging one campus, we need a single system that will meet the needs of both main campus and the division. Next slide. We're very excited for where a curriculum management system will bring us. It's going to be like going from a closet full of mismatched roller skates to a brand new Lexus. It's really amazing how many of our campus processes are going to be improved by efficient curriculum management, and how much work we do now to work around our current inefficiencies. When a new program is implemented, or a class changes, or degree requirements change, or a program needs to be assessed and complex analysis done, or a pandemic makes it necessary to move all classes online in a heartbeat. And say it with me now, no more spreadsheets. We're currently exploring the purchase and implementation of such a system, and are investigating the systems in the marketplace and deciding the best path forward for procurement. The new SIS is also presenting us with new opportunities and options for a new financial aid system. Financing college is difficult and confusing, particularly for incoming students. There's a reason that financial offices get inundated with requests for help at the start of each term. Heck, when I was a grad student, I asked my wonderful wife, who works in financial aid, to fill up my FAFSA for me. And our financial aid team does a heroic job every year of helping our students finance their education. But they need systems that work as well as they do in order to keep up with our students' needs. But despite the need, we also recognize that big changes like this have to be timed correctly. There's change fatigue. People are burned out from COVID, previous implementations, and a crazy fall. Furthermore, we need time to do this implementation so it works with the broader ESR SIS project and with the financial aid business cycle. So we're currently evaluating when the best time for this change will be. Stay tuned. So what's next? We're issuing a new SIS RFP. Through the RFP, we'll select a new SIS vendor partner. We will be continuing pre-habbing activities such as continuity planning, reporting, VAC 2.0, mobile, and more. We will select a new curriculum management system, and we will determine the best timing for a financial aid system implementation. As we select our curriculum management vendor, move to implementation for financial aid, and move forward with the SIS selection and implementation, we're going to be creating design teams. These teams will be drawn from subject matter experts around campus and create a stable of experts who have a say in design decisions and an informed background about why implementation decisions were made. You know that person who's been on campus forever and who knows about arcane system processes. They might have a bookshelf full of binders and notebooks. We want a lot of those folks. We're really relying on internal talent rather than hiring a bunch of contracted consultants who will come in, implement, and then leave and take their knowledge with them. These design teams will help build this internal expertise. Now I will hand things back over to Keith.
Thanks so much, Dave. So yeah, that's the end of our presentation. We want to let you know that if you want to find out more information or read any of our past newsletters, you can go to the ESR program website. We have our own area there. And we will also be sharing these slides with you so that you can click the links that we have embedded. You may have noticed that in a lot of the previous slides, there are little snippets at the bottom that have links out to various pieces of our communications. But if you want to receive future news, please subscribe to our newsletter. Go to the ESR newsletter page and make sure you select the ESR SIS project updates when you subscribe there. With that, I will invite my co-presenters back on camera and we are ready for Q&A.
Hello. First of all, I have to say, this is a really complicated project, and to boil it down in 45 minutes or 50 minutes is really impressive. So great job, everyone. There are a few things in the Q&A. I will start with something easy from Lindsay Root. Can this link be put into the chat? And Brian, I believe you have that ready, don't you?
Yep, I'll paste that to everyone right here. This is the link for the continuity planning form that Jonathan showed on the slide.
And there's another kind of logistical question from a mysterious anonymous attendee. We do have these, as a reminder, recorded. They will be available on campuslisa.ucsd.edu soon, but there is a question about sharing the slide deck. Will that be made available?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually going to the sharing permissions right now, and I will pop that into the chat as well.
Fantastic. All right, now for a couple meatier questions, also from mysterious anonymous attendees. Was there a consistent area that the team felt that the existing offerings were deficient?
Yeah, and I don't think there wasn't really a specific area that was, there were some areas that were higher than lower. I don't remember the scores off the top of my head, to be honest, but you know, the general consensus was that across the board, you know, financial aid aside, when we did the CRP scoring, the scores just weren't where we wanted them to be. You know, instead of what we were hoping for, you know, 3s and 4s at least on the 0 to 5 scale, there were more like 2s and 1s. So I know that's not exactly answering the question, but it was kind of across the board. It wasn't really it focused in just one area of the conference room pilot.
Anybody else want to add to that before I move on to the next one? Okay, I'm gonna move on. This is a good one. All right, so again, from an anonymous, will the system be integrated with OFC at the level of financial reporting?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So we are having talks with the OFC team and not quite sure exactly, you know, what's meant by level of financial reporting. Certainly anything that's in the hub. So we're creating a financial activity hub. We're pushing data in there as well. The hubs have the ability to join data very easily with each other, but understand also that the financial activity hub is just beginning their path. And so if you're asking, will there be data that's more integrated in the actual OFC product itself? The answer is yes. You'll have much more seamless data because we're going to build in the chart strings. They'll go all the way through the system, right? Because what we've had to do right now is kind of retrofit ISIS with index numbers and detail codes into our new chart of account and into the new ledger with all of the chart strings. That creates a lot of different challenges for us. And there's a lot of manual work that has to go into that. And when you add in, you know, ProSam, our financial aid product, into that, and you're dealing with a subledger of a subledger going into another subledger, it can get pretty complex. And so there will be a lot of work that will be done to help eliminate that and make the integrations much more seamless and aligned all the way through.
Okay, and from our very own brilliant privacy officer, Pegah Parsi, we've got, as you might expect, will the SIS program be reviewed for privacy issues? And I have the same question myself, actually.
Hi, Pegah. Yeah, definitely. Privacy is definitely at one of the things on the list to be checked for in terms of all of the variety of privacy issues that we face, not just FERPA, but all of the financial aid, security and privacy issues that we have to deal with, compliance and regulation in there are absolutely a part of the review checklist when considering the new SIS.
I would say that one of the advantages of a new modern system will also be more advanced permissions for staff than we have right now. So there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice programs, academic departments, that kind of thing, and have a finer granularity of permissions for staff access. So that's what we're looking forward to as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Katie. And it's a great point because even the granularity of staff access, but the ability to address like a lot of the modern day regulations that, ISIS never conceived of GDPR or, the California Privacy Records Act. Those types of things are older systems that were 30 and 40 years ago. They never were architected to really understand what those things are. And these modern day systems, the ones that we're looking for, absolutely have these things in mind and ways to address these things in more seamless fashion instead of these very manual, archaic, stone and chisel ways that we're kind of doing things today.
Okay, in the interest of time, because we are about to close it down, but there is one that probably won't take too long to answer. So I'll throw this one in. Sorry for those of you I couldn't get to in the questions. There's a lot of great questions. You all can check that out. Most are anonymous, but will you hire recent interns or recent graduates for this project?
I think I can answer that, at least on the business process analysis side. We're not looking into hiring interns or graduate students. As you can imagine, this is a very complex and sensitive project. And so we're really trying to use our in-house expertise first and partnering with those folks. So people who especially have previous experience with large system implementations or who have specialized skills such as BSAs, those are the only hires that we're looking at right now. And we're not even doing that immediately. We have our team that we have that's addressing our needs right now. I think once we move into selection and the partnership, then we'll talk about what needs we have. But at this point, yeah, just an intern would not be at the level that we would need for this type of a project.
So I'll share a little bit from the technical side. ITS is definitely looking at hiring larger pools of students for a lot of different things. And so I could certainly see some students being a part of the SIS project in assisting us with some of the activities that we have to do on the technical side. And I think it all goes into experiential learning. Also, it allows us to have a great user base for instant feedback on things. Alex Wu in ITS has an amazing program that he's been running for several years now on the mobile application. So I don't know how many folks know, but a lot of our mobile application development has been developed by students. And so there's a concerted effort right now in ITS to expand that program and really start incorporating students a lot more into the various work streams that we have. So pretty excited about that.
All right, you wrapped up just in time, Jonathan. Well done. So I would like to remind everybody that for those of you who had questions that weren't answered, questions can be sent to esr-student@ucsd.edu. So write that down or we'll put it in the chat. If anyone wants to throw in the chat, esr-student, ucsd.edu. It's a great place to email questions about anything that you might have regarding this wonderful presentation that we have. So first of all, I'd like to thank the presenters, not only sharing the time and insight with us today, but it's September 30th with fall quarter. What a timing, right? So thank you to everyone who participated, and that's our team, the presenters, and of course you, the audience, for taking time out of your day to check out what we had. Please visit us. Remember, campuslisa.ucsd.edu will have more information for future sessions, as well as the recordings from what you just saw. Next Thursday, October 7th, from noon to 1 p.m., our next session will be web-based research collaboration and data management platforms, looking at SeedMe Hub and Hub Zero. So put that on your calendar. Don't miss it. Thank you all so much. And thank you, panelists. Everybody have the great rest of your day. It's been a blast.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.